The desert wind cut across the dunes like a blade, carrying sand that hissed against the twisted metal bones of the resilient. Marcus Blackwood moved through the wreckage with the familiarity of a man who had walked these same paths for years, his shadow stretching long across the barren horizon as the sun bled toward its death. Gaunt yet unbroken, his frame was built from necessity. Not vanity muscle hardened by survival, hands calloused from tearing apart metal and wiring for scraps. Skin burned and lined by years under an unforgiving sky. Once, long ago, he had been chief engineer of the proud Earth vessel Resilient, educated at 3 prestigious academies, a man whose designs had once been praised in conference halls and celebrated in journals. Now he was nothing more than a scavenger, a ghost picking through the carcass of his past life, piecing together enough to stay alive one more day. His home, a modified escape pod, barely holding together, was hidden on the edge of a dune field, its rust-stained hatch keeping out the worst of the desert storms and the creatures that sometimes circled at night. He ate reconstituted protein mush, cooked over a scavenged burner, drank recycled condensation, and told himself that sending out a distress beacon every morning was not pointless. 6 years had passed with no answer, no ship dropping from the skies, and the silence of the stars pressed on him heavier than any dune. His greatest fear wasn't death, it was being forgotten, erased from the galaxy as if he'd never existed. When the last storm tore through the desert with iron winds, Marcus thought little of it. Storms came and went, leaving nothing but stripped bones of dunes behind. But when the sky cleared and the sand settled, something new had been uncovered, a glint of metal that did not belong to the Resilient or any scavenged wreck he had seen before. It took him the better part of the day to trek out, the sinking light of dusk guiding him toward the prize. What he found made him whistle low through cracked lips. Half buried in the sand lay the broken corpse of a vessel unlike any he had seen, sleek and elegant even in ruin. The design screamed wealth, status, what might have been a luxury yacht for the elite of some alien dynasty. Its hull gleamed faintly where the sand had not dulled it, panels of rare alloy Marcus could only imagine the worth of. He muttered to himself, voice dry with disbelief. Someone important owned you. His hands brushed against a strip of alloy, plated with what looked like genuine Venusian gold, its luster stubborn against the grit. If he was lucky, there would be food caches preserved in sealed compartments, maybe even power cells still holding charge. Enough to buy him time, enough to keep him alive. Hope was a dangerous thing after 6 years, but it stirred in him nonetheless. Methodical as always, Marcus pried open collapsed doors, shifting bulkheads with the leverage of scavenged poles. Most of the cockpit was crushed beyond recognition, its controls twisted like melted bone, but the passenger quarters told a different story. The walls had resisted the impact. Cushions and furniture clung stubbornly to the memory of opulence. It was in one of these chambers, half collapsed with a door jammed by debris, that Marcus caught sight of something impossible. A faint blue glow pulsed from under a fallen bulkhead, weak but steady, like a heartbeat buried in the rubble. Marcus froze. In his years of scouring wrecks, he'd learned to treat anything glowing with suspicion. Light could mean radiation, energy cores primed to rupture, or worse. But the glow was strangely organic, alive. He forced aside twisted metal, sand pouring from the gaps as if the desert itself was reluctant to give up what it had claimed. Beneath the wreckage lay a figure. Not a corpse, but a being. Humanoid in shape, though his skin shimmered with a bioluminescent blue that seemed to fight back the darkness. His suit, immaculate even through dust and ruin, was woven with golden accents and a belt of exotic material Marcus couldn't place. His face was fine-boned, noble, and in its unconscious slackness carried the weight of someone accustomed to command. Marcus crouched, pressing grimy fingers to the stranger's neck, until he found a pulse weak but steady, alive, against every instinct hardened by solitude. Marcus spoke aloud, his voice rough from disuse. "Hey, can you hear me?" The alien gave no response. Years alone had taught Marcus suspicion, but not cruelty. Whatever this being was, whatever trouble might follow, he couldn't leave him to die beneath the sand. With a grunt, he slid his arms beneath the body, surprised by the lightness of the frame, and lifted. The glow dimmed, the alien's breathing shallow but present. Marcus adjusted the weight against his shoulder and looked back across the desert toward the tiny silhouette of his escape pod shelter. Another mouth to feed, he muttered, not realizing how those words would echo in days to come. He turned into the wind, carrying the stranger through the twilight dunes, unaware that this simple act of compassion was about to alter the course of his life, and perhaps the fate of more than one world. The escape pod was dimly lit, its patched walls humming with the faint resonance of salvaged power cells, a meager refuge from the desert night. Marcus lowered the unconscious stranger onto his one blanket, a faded military-issue square that had once kept him alive through sandstorms and freezing winds. For a long moment, he simply stood over the alien, chest heaving from the trek, sweat carving trails through the dust on his face. The bioluminescent glow from the being's skin cast strange shadows against the metal bulkheads, filling the cramped space with an otherworldly light. Marcus busied himself with routine to stave off unease lighting the portable stove, boiling water, stirring the contents of a protein pack into a thin soup. The smells were dull and metallic, but the heat filled the pod with a fragile comfort. When he finally looked back, he caught himself studying the alien's features with a mix of awe and suspicion. The skin shimmered like a midnight ocean caught under starlight. The ears were slightly elongated, the facial structure elegant. Even in ruin, the stranger radiated an aura of refinement Marcus hadn't seen in years. He crouched beside him, pressing water to cracked lips. "Don't die on me now," he muttered. "I didn't carry you all this way just to bury you." The alien stirred. Fingers twitched against the torn fabric of his immaculate suit. Eyes fluttered open to reveal irises like molten silver. They flicked rapidly, registering unfamiliar surroundings before locking onto Marcus with sharp clarity. For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them, two survivors staring across a gulf of difference, one gaunt and ragged, the other luminous even in weakness. Then the alien spoke, voice melodic despite the hoarseness. "Where?" Marcus set the cup down, startled by the sheer presence in that single word. "You're safe. For now. Your ship crashed. I found you under the wreckage." The alien blinked, processing, then accepted the water Marcus offered with a trembling hand. He drank slowly, every motion carrying a natural grace that felt foreign in the rusting cocoon of Marcus's shelter. His silver gaze traveled over Marcus's patched boots, worn clothes, rough stubble. A small frown creased his lips. "You saved me," he said, tone weighted with more than gratitude. Marcus shrugged, turning back to stir the soup. Anyone would have done the same. "No," the alien said softly, a faint smile curving his mouth. "They would not. Not someone with so little giving to someone unknown." He sat up with effort, wincing as pain flared through his frame, but his composure never broke. "I am Talon Vex, of House Vex, third dynasty of the Astral Confluence." He spoke the titles like they should mean something, each word carrying practiced gravitas. To Marcus, it was nothing but foreign syllables. "Marcus Blackwood," he replied dryly. "Former engineer, Earth vessel resilient. Current resident of nowhere important." At that, Talon's eyes widened, astonishment breaking through his polished demeanor. "A human," he whispered. "Here? This far from your territories?" He looked around the cramped pod, taking in the scavenged wires, the stacked scrap, the pitiful collection of tools. "How long have you been here?" Marcus ladled soup into a chipped bowl, his voice matter-of-fact. 6 years. Give or take. Stopped counting after the first couple. Talon's silver eyes softened, a flicker of something like wonder sparking within them. Alone? Marcus pushed the bowl into his hands. It's not much, but it's hot. The alien sipped, expression unreadable, until he set the bowl down with deliberate care. You have nothing, yet you share. You know nothing of me, yet you offer shelter. He studied Marcus intently, his bioluminescence pulsing faintly in rhythm with his breath. Marcus Blackwood, I believe fate has brought us together for a purpose. Marcus barked a laugh, low and humorless, rubbing at the stubble on his jaw. If fate wanted to do me a favor, it would have sent a rescue ship 6 years ago, not another mouth to feed. Talon's smile deepened, unexpectedly warm. Perhaps fate has a sense of humor. He adjusted his suit with a careful tug, as though even near death he clung to dignity. I am not merely a traveler. I am chief executive of VIX Interstellar Enterprises. My corporation spans 17 star systems. The words landed with the weight of revelation, but Marcus froze with spoon halfway to his mouth. He blinked, incredulous. You're what? Talon inclined his head, voice calm but resolute. In your terms, I am what you would call a billionaire. Before Marcus could respond, a sharp chime split the silence. Talon raised his wrist, tapping a nearly invisible device embedded there. A holographic display loomed into the air, throwing blue-white light across the walls of the pod. Right on schedule? Talon murmured, almost to himself, though satisfaction colored his tone. My security detail has locked onto my beacon. It will arrive within the hour. Marcus stared at him, stunned. 6 years alone, 6 years of despair and dust, and he had just dragged home one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. He muttered under his breath, half in disbelief, half in resignation. Another mouth to feed, right? Unaware. He had just carried his way into the center of a storm that would tear open everything he thought he knew about his exile, his worth, and the quiet galaxy beyond the dunes. The hum of approaching engines reached Marcus before the ship appeared. A sound so alien to the silence of his desert nights that it made his chest ache. For years he had listened for that note, half imagined it in the howl of storms, only to be left staring at empty skies. Now it was real. He stepped outside the pod, shielding his eyes as pinpricks of light pierced the horizon and grew into the sleek silhouette of a vessel descending with eerie grace. Not a lumbering cargo hauler or a military frigate, but a shuttle of refined design, its hull gleaming like liquid silver, engines whispering at frequencies that resonated more in his bones than his ears. For a moment, Marcus couldn't breathe. It was as though the universe had suddenly remembered him. Inside, Talon Vex adjusted his immaculate suit, wincing faintly but refusing to show weakness. My team, he announced with the air of inevitability. You will see soon why I said fate has a sense of humor. The shuttle touched down on the flattened patch of desert Marcus had once cleared in vain. An absurd landing strip made of aligned scrap markers and charred sand. The ramp extended without a hiss or clank, every motion seamless, controlled. 2 figures emerged first tall, broad-shouldered aliens whose blue skin gleamed with the same faint glow as Talon's, but hardened by augmentations at their temples and jawlines. Security, no doubt. Their silver eyes scanned the area with ruthless precision before one gave a curt nod. All clear. Executive Vex, he called. Medical team standing by. Talon inclined his head in acknowledgement, then turned to Marcus, and for the first time, there was something personal in his voice. Come, there is someone I want you to meet. Marcus fell into step beside him, acutely aware of his own patched boots and threadbare clothes. Every detail of his survivalist existence thrown into sharp relief by the elegance of the beings before him. At the top of the ramp, a third figure appeared. Marcus stopped dead, the words caught in his throat. She moved with a liquid grace that seemed less like walking and more like flowing down the incline, each step perfectly measured. Her skin was a deeper indigo than Talon's, patterned faintly with bioluminescent lines that shifted in subtle rhythm with her movements. A charcoal gray suit hugged her form with an effortless precision that was both professional and devastatingly flattering. Her eyes silver like Talon's, but softer, more searching, found Marcus at once, widening in surprise before narrowing with sharp appraisal. "Executive Vex," she said, voice melodic yet edged with authority, "the board has been notified of your recovery. They will be relieved." Then her gaze lingered on Marcus, and the edge softened. "And this must be the human who carried you out of the wreckage." Talon smiled, warmth breaking through his usual composure. "Scylla," he said, "this is Marcus Blackwood. He is the reason I stand here." She extended her hand, slender and faintly luminescent. Marcus hesitated, self-conscious, before grasping it. Her skin was unexpectedly warm, textured with something just beyond human familiarity, sending a current of sensation up his arm. "Then we are all in your debt, Marcus Blackwood," she said softly. He swallowed hard. "Just Marcus, and no debt necessary." A smile curved her lips, a smile that hinted at both professionalism and something more curious. "Well, just Marcus," she replied. "House Vex does not forget." They were ushered aboard, and the contrast hit Marcus like a blow. Where his shelter was rust and grit, this was polished perfection. Walls of smooth alloy pulsing faintly with ambient light, air laced with scents of spice and flowers instead of metal tone. Every surface seemed alive with subtle design. Marcus's rough clothes and weathered skin felt like insults in the face of such refinement. He lowered himself into a seat lined with supple fabric softer than anything he'd touched in years. Scylla sat beside him, her presence a subtle gravity that pulled his attention despite his effort to look away. "You seem overwhelmed," she said, not unkindly. He gave a short laugh. 6 years of dust and rust. This feels obscene. Her lips quirked in amusement. Civilization often does, to those who've lived without it. But the moment fractured with a sudden jolt that rocked the shuttle. Lights flickered. Warning tones filled the cabin. The security men barked alerts as the pilot's hands blurred over controls. Drive system malfunction. Power bleeding from main thrusters. Talon's voice snapped like a whip. "Report." Marcus felt the old reflexes kick in, instincts forged not in desert scavenging, but in years as an engineer. He was on his feet before his mind caught up, crossing to the nearest console where streams of alien script pulsed red. "May I?" he barked, already reaching. The technician hesitated, eyes darting to Talon. "Let him," Talon ordered. Marcus's fingers flew across unfamiliar keys, the patterns translating in his head as if by instinct. "Your power's being rerouted. This isn't failure, it's deliberate. Someone buried code to mimic cascade overload." He magnified the schematic, tracing loops of energy redirection. "It's elegant, almost beautiful. But it's sabotage." Scylla leaned in close, silver eyes flicking between the screens and Marcus's face. "Can you stop it?" she asked. He nodded grimly, breath sharp with focus. "It's trying to overwhelm you with thousands of micro-errors. But I know." The shuttle stabilized with a shudder that rolled through its frame like a sigh of relief, the alarms flickering from angry red to steady blue as systems realigned. Crew members exhaled audibly, some slumping back into their seats, while Marcus remained hunched over the console, watching the diagnostic streams until he was sure the Sabotage was truly caged. Only then did he lean back, rubbing a hand across his face, his heart pounding as the weight of what just happened settled in. 6 years of rust and dust had dulled his memory of this, the rush of solving a system on the brink, the fierce clarity of engineering under fire. He had forgotten how alive it made him feel. Talon's clap echoed in the cabin, sharp and deliberate. "Remarkable," he declared, his silver eyes gleaming. "Our best engineers would have taken hours to isolate what you unraveled in minutes." Marcus shook his head, uncomfortable under the praise. "Just fundamentals. Technology changes, but the bones of a system never do." Sila's hand brushed his shoulder lightly as she leaned closer, her voice softer than Talon's applause, but cutting deeper. "Don't diminish it. You just saved us. Again." The shuttle descended smoothly after that, breaking through atmosphere into a world that stole Marcus's breath. Luminia Prime spread beneath them like a jewel-vast oceans, glowing with bioluminescent tides, spirals of silver and glass cities, rising directly from the water as if grown rather than built. Traffic flowed along sky lanes in luminous threads. Light orbs floated in precise constellations, and every structure seemed designed to reflect and refract the lavender sky into living architecture. After 6 years of endless rust-colored dunes, Marcus pressed his palm against the viewport, his throat tightening. "It's beautiful," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Sila turned her gaze on him, the faint shimmer of her skin catching the glow from the city below. "Welcome to the heart of the astral confluence," she said softly. "Few outside our kind ever see it." The shuttle angled toward the tallest spire of them all, a tower of prism glass and alloy that shimmered like a column of frozen starlight. Vic's Tower, home of Talon's empire. They touched down on a private platform, and before Marcus could brace himself, the ramp lowered into chaos. Lights exploded in his face-hovering media drones, reporters shouting questions in alien tongues, flashes that left his vision speckled with afterimages. Talon stepped forward with practiced ease, shielding Marcus with a casual sweep of his arm, his charm flowing as effortlessly as the silk of his words. "Yes, I was rescued. Yes, by this remarkable human. No, he is not giving statements today." He guided Marcus through the storm, bodyguards forming a wall of precision around them, until they were swept into the sanctuary of a private lift. The silence inside was a shock after the noise. Marcus pressed his back to the wall, rubbing his eyes, feeling as though the desert was still clinging to him, dust lodged in his skin, in his very bones. Sila stood beside him, close enough that he could feel the faint warmth radiating from her. "It will only intensify," she said, silver gaze locked on him. "The board, the public, they will see you as both curiosity and disruption. Your existence here already stirs old fears." He met her eyes, still disoriented. "I didn't ask for any of this." She tilted her head slightly, studying him with that same disarming directness. "Perhaps not, but fate rarely asks permission." The lift opened to a penthouse that dwarfed his pod 100 times over. Marcus stood frozen at the threshold, staring at open chambers filled with soft light, walls of glass looking out over the sea of towers, and furnishings that seemed to breathe elegance. He felt like a relic dragged into a cathedral. Talon swept past him, already calling for attendance and dispatching orders, while Sila lingered, watching Marcus absorb it all. "Overwhelming?" she asked, and this time there was no judgment in her tone, only quiet sympathy. "That's putting it mildly," he muttered, rubbing at his stubbled jaw. She moved to stand beside him, shoulder brushing his eyes on the same impossible horizon. "It can be much, yes, but survival has already tempered you. Civilization is no harsher, only more complex." He caught himself staring at her reflection in the glass, silver eyes overlaying the glittering skyline, and looked away too quickly. Later, Krell arrived, stern-faced and efficient, his voice carrying the steel of command as he delivered the first analysis of the Sabotage. "It matches what we found on the wreck of the executive yacht," he said flatly. "Same structure, same loops. Whoever did this knows our systems intimately." Talon's expression hardened. "You're saying it wasn't chance? That both attempts were engineered?" Krell's silver gaze flicked to Marcus. "And perhaps more. There are traces in the code patterns we've seen before. 6 years ago." Marcus's breath caught. "The Resilient," he said. "The ion storm that took us down." Krell nodded, grim as iron. "The signatures align. Your crash may not have been an accident, human. Someone may have wanted you stranded." The word struck harder than any sandstorm ever had. For 6 years he had believed he was forgotten, left to rot by the indifference of a vast galaxy. But if what Krell suggested was true, then his exile had not been neglect. It had been design. Marcus's hand tightened on the railing of the glass balcony until his knuckles went white. "Then the question isn't why no one came for me," he said, his voice low and shaking. "It's who made sure they didn't." The boardroom was a cathedral of glass and silver, suspended high in the upper levels of Vic's tower, with a lavender sky pressed close, turning the polished walls into mirrors that reflected every twitch, every glance. 20 executives sat in a crescent around a vast hollow table, their bioluminescent skin casting faint ripples of blue light across their faces. Some wore their heritage like armor, adorned in jeweled sashes and metallic pins, others in severe charcoal uniforms that spoke of efficiency and austerity. At the center sat Talon Vex, posture regal, expression unreadable, and at his side awkward, out of place, but unflinching Marcus Blackwood. He felt the weight of every gaze settle on him, curiosity and suspicion mixing like heat lightning before a storm. He stood straighter than he felt, hands clasped behind his back, boots scuffed against immaculate flooring. He had survived storms and starvation, he told himself. He could survive this too. The session opened not with courtesy, but with an attack. A figure rose at the far curve of the crescent, skin a darker shade of blue, eyes sharp as blades, silver adornments flashing with deliberate ostentation. "This," he said, voice carrying across the chamber like a verdict, "is an outrage. That you bring this human into our sanctum is proof enough of your failing judgment." Marcus didn't need an introduction. The disdain in the man's eyes named him before Talon spoke. Director Prell, xenophobic, ambitious, and already circling like a carrion bird. Talon's reply was calm, almost bored. "Marcus Blackwood is here as my security consultant. His insights are relevant, since our lives would not be here at all without him." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, some skeptical, others uneasy. Prell leaned forward, voice rising. "He is a primitive species, a scavenger who by chance dragged you from wreckage. And you reward him with access to our highest councils? Madness. Dangerous madness." Marcus could have stayed silent, but years of speaking only to himself had stripped away fear of words. He stepped forward, his voice steady though his heart pounded. "You're curious about me? Then let me be clear. 6 years ago, my ship, the Resilient, was destroyed in what we believed was a natural ion storm. I was the only survivor. I've spent every day since scavenging, sending out distress calls that went unanswered, until I pulled your executive out of the sand." He looked across the chamber, locking eyes with Prell. "But here's the thing. The sabotage that nearly killed us on the shuttle, it carries the same signatures as the so-called storm that wrecked my ship. Both engineered, both designed to look like chance." He tapped a pad Talon had given him, and the holotable lit with streams of comparative data waveforms from the shuttle's corrupted thrusters, besides storm patterns recorded in the Resilient's last logs. They matched with unnerving precision. Gasps broke the tension like cracks in glass. Some leaned forward, studying the display, their silver eyes narrowing as realization spread. Talon's voice cut through the shock. We are not looking at coincidence. Someone engineered both events. Someone ensured that Marcus Blackwood was stranded where I would one day fall from the sky. That cannot be chance. That is conspiracy. All eyes turned to Prell, whose carefully composed disdain faltered, just for a breath, before he gathered it back. Fabrications, he snapped. Human trickery. You cannot trust his word. Marcus smiled thinly, though his palms were slick with sweat. Funny thing, Director. The official report of Talon's crash never mentioned me rescuing him. Yet you objected to my presence before those details were made public. Almost like you already knew. The chamber erupted in whispers, silver eyes darting between Prell and Talon. Prell's skin had paled, the bioluminescent glow beneath his features flickering unevenly. He opened his mouth, but Krell, the security chief, stepped forward and dropped another weight into the silence. We traced the payment to the shuttle saboteur, a hidden account masked with sophisticated encryption, but not sophisticated enough. It leads back to holdings tied to Director Prell's interests. The air turned brittle, the room alive with shock and anger. Prell's hand twitched toward his wrist device, but Krell was faster. A containment field snapping into place, it froze the director mid-step. His adornments gleaming mockingly in the glow. Talon rose, his voice hard as tempered alloy. Espionage. Attempted murder. Theft of intellectual property. He gestured toward Marcus without breaking his stare from Prell. This man's algorithms, Blackwood navigation system, were aboard the Resilient. Stolen when his ship was brought down. Prell Industries has been profiting from them in shadow for years. Marcus's throat went dry at the words. But Scylla, seated behind, leaned forward and touched his arm. Her voice steady as iron. They didn't just strand you. They tried to erase you, to bury your name with the dunes. But you survived. The chamber roared with outrage, some demanding immediate trial, others hurling accusations. Prell's eyes burned with venom, but his words were lost as security hauled him out, immobilized and disgraced. In the quiet that followed, Talon looked to Marcus, his voice lower but carrying more weight than any outburst. You see now, you were not forgotten. You were targeted. And in surviving, you have uncovered what none of us could. Marcus felt the truth settle like stone in his gut, heavy and irreversible. He was not just a castaway pulled back into the light. He had been a pawn in a game far larger than he ever imagined, and by saving one stranger from the sand, he had set the entire board aflame. The grand hall of Vic's tower glittered as though the very stars had descended into its vaulted chamber. 1,000 floating orbs pulsing in harmony with the slow rhythm of alien music. Dignitaries from across 17 star systems filled the space, their voices weaving into a hum of anticipation beneath soaring panels of prism glass. For Marcus Blackwood, standing at the center in a midnight blue suit tailored to his frame, but infused with Luminian design, the moment felt unreal. Only weeks earlier, he had been scavenging protein packs from Rex, sand in his teeth and despair in his chest. Now he stood flanked by Talon, Vex, and Scylla, about to unveil a system that would reshape interstellar travel, the Blackwood navigation system. He adjusted his collar, sweat prickling beneath the fine fabric, his nerves jangling louder than any storm had ever managed. Scylla's hand slipped into his, her silver eyes catching the glow of the orbs. Terrified? She whispered. He exhaled a shaky laugh. Absolutely. Her lips curved into that direct, disarming smile. Good. Only the terrified ever change the galaxy. The crowd erupted into polite applause as Talon introduced him, voice ringing with effortless charisma. From forgotten survivor to innovator, he declared. Marcus Blackwood reminds us that greatness can be born of the most unlikely soil. Marcus stepped forward, throat dry, but as the holodisplay came alive with diagrams of his algorithms, his nerves melted into focus. He spoke with the passion of a man who had lived his work, explaining how his refinements cut hyperspace calculation times by 60%, reducing misjump risk and energy costs. Murmurs of awe rippled through the hall as the implications took hold. But as he neared the demonstration, a flicker in the code caught his eye. He felt it like a hunter feels the prickle of being watched. He glanced at Scylla, whose slight frown confirmed she saw it too. Sabotage again. Without breaking stride in his speech, Marcus diverted the system's execution, fingers subtle against the console. Instead of bleeding his algorithms to some hidden receiver, the malicious subroutine carried his reverse trace, a trap he had planted days earlier. On the far edge of the hall, alarms shrieked. Security surged as Krell's operatives closed in on a group of cloaked figures, their devices sparking as Marcus's corrupted package fried them from within. Gasps and shouts filled the chamber, but Marcus's voice cut through, calm and clear. This is the danger of secrecy. Sabotage thrives in shadow. But resilience adapts, resists, survives. His words silenced the chaos, and when Talon lifted a glass in toast, the hall thundered with applause, not just for the technology, but for the man who had delivered it unbroken by betrayal. Later, the celebration spilled into terraces overlooking the city, the lavender sky bleeding into night, while ribbons of air traffic glowed like arteries of light. Marcus stood at the glass rail, suit loosened, shoulders finally relaxing as Scylla joined him. She handed him a document glowing faintly in her hands. "It's official," she said. "The Interspecies Cultural Exchange Committee has recognized our partnership. You and I, human and Luminian, the first to be sanctioned in law." He stared at it, wonder catching in his chest. "That was fast. I thought politics took years." Her silver eyes sparkled with quiet pride. "It helps when one partner saves an executive, exposes a conspiracy, thwarts sabotage, and revolutionizes navigation." He laughed, pulling her closer, her warmth grounding him against the enormity of it all. "What happens now?" he asked softly. She tilted her head against his shoulder. "That depends. What do you want, Marcus Blackwood?" He gazed out at the glittering city, remembering the rust-colored dunes, the silence, the fear of being erased. "I want to build something no one can bury," he said. "A foundation for stranded spacers, lost crews. No one should go through what I did, forgotten." Scylla's lips brushed his jaw as her fingers traced circles over his chest. "The Blackwood Foundation," she murmured. "It has a noble ring." He smiled, then grew serious, lifting her chin gently so her silver eyes met his. "And I want this, us, whatever it takes to bridge our worlds." Her breath caught, but her answer was steady. "Then we navigate it together." The moment hung suspended, fragile and radiant, until Talon's approach broke it, his stride sure, his smile sharp. "Enjoy your peace while it lasts," he said, handing Marcus a thin data slate. Its surface flickered with decrypted transmissions, lines of code Marcus recognized instantly. His pulse stumbled. It was his distress beacon, not unanswered, as he had believed for 6 years. Intercepted, logged, watched, his gaze snapped up, heart hammering. "Someone received my signals." Talon's smile faded, replaced by grim certainty. "Not just received, monitored. The astral confluence has factions older and darker than Prell. They left you there deliberately, Marcus. They wanted to see if a human could endure 6 years alone." The city lights glittered beneath them, but Marcus felt only the chill of the desert night clawing back into his bones. He had not been forgotten. He had been tested. His jaw tightened, a flare of defiance burning in his chest as he pulled Scylla closer, her warmth anchoring him against the enormity of the revelation. "Then let them watch," he said quietly, the words a promise forged of survival and fury. "Because I'm still here." And as the lavender night closed around the spires of Luminia Prime, Marcus Blackwood understood his story was only just beginning.